this age, I'm going to get married. By this age, I'm going to start a family. By this age, I'm going to, advance in my career. I had all these plans, right? Welcome back to my channel. If you are new to me, my name is Naila Abdullah. I'm a mental health therapist turned toxic relationship coach. And after overcoming my own personal experiences with toxic family and romantic relationships, I'm now on a mission to help women like you heal from toxic or narcissistic relationships where you can move on, and not only move on, but make sure you don't fall back into the same pattern of toxic relationships again. So if that sounds like something you need, something you're interested in, stay tuned. Let's get into this topic. Now, in today's episode, you're going to learn what you need to know to stop being manipulated into thinking that they've changed. You've been in the relationship for long enough where you are fed up, or you get to the point where you're fed up. You realize a person is toxic. The way they're treating you is not what you deserve. You realize you need to move on. You need to let go, but somehow they do things or say things to manipulate you into thinking that, okay, it's different this time. They're better this time. And it leaves you feeling frustrated with yourself, embarrassed about the decision that you're making to go back, because you're right back to square one, and that they actually have not changed. Now, before we go into the lesson, you may hear a little sound in the background. That is my baby boy. If you watch some of my previous videos the last couple weeks, maybe you see that I looked a little bit different. My face was a little puffier. I was definitely more winded. Well, that's because I was in the last few weeks of my pregnancy, so he is here. But of course, I cannot ignore your questions to me, your emails to me, the topics that come up. So I'm still going to be here providing you with as much education and support that I can here on this channel. The only difference is now I'm going to have my little prince with me, but it's all good. Let's continue. So the first point that I want you to consider about how can I stop being manipulated into thinking that they've changed is you want to ask yourself, why am I being manipulated? How is that working on me to think that they've changed? And what I want you to consider in this first point is that you are being manipulated into thinking that they've changed because you were basing your expectations on them based on what they're saying to you in that moment, or based on what they're doing for you in that moment, right? So for example, if you were in a 5-year, 10-year, maybe even 15-year relationship with them, you are basing your expectation that they've changed based on maybe what they said to you in that day or that past week. I'm sorry, I should have done better. I won't do this again. I realize, you are the one that's right for me. Whatever it is that they say or they do, they're being more nice to you. Whatever it is, you're basing it off of that moment. That's why you're being manipulated. If you want to change that now, you need to look at the patterns of behavior over the time period. Now, yes, in some cases, people do change, but we're not talking about your average person. We're talking about people that you already realize, you've already identified is manipulative, is toxic, does even maybe have narcissistic traits, right? So you are not just basing it off of, okay, this person suddenly had an epiphany and they've changed. No, you need to base your expectations off of the patterns of behavior. That's what I want you to ingrain in your psyche, patterns of behavior. And I often use these very simple examples, and I like them because they're simple. When you look at a snake, right, an alligator, a lion, a pattern of behavior, you're not just looking at the moment like, oh, this little thing slithering around is cute. No, you're looking at the character traits over the time period. You know they cannot change who they are. They are who they are, right? And if you're watching this episode, you've already come to that realization, right? But you are basing your expectation, and it's allowing you to be manipulated because you are basing it off of what they're saying to you in that moment. And then you are choosing to ignore the patterns of behavior over the past several years, right? And that's not to make you feel bad or to put blame, but we have to take responsibility for what we are experiencing, right? So you want to look at patterns of behavior. Base your expectations off of patterns of behavior, not just what the person is saying or doing in that very short moment. 2 tools that I want to suggest to you to help you to look at the patterns of behavior, because as human beings, we're very good at being in denial. We're very good at lying to ourselves. I'm laughing because I often think of in the mornings when it's time to get up in the morning, at least for me, and I know some of you may be as well. I'm really good at saying 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. And those 5 more minutes turn into a whole 30 minutes or 45 minutes, right? So we're really good at, and I'm just using that example because it shows how we're really good at kind of just convincing ourselves just a little bit more, right? But we do that with other things in life too. And some things that can be really detrimental to our well-being, not just waking up late for work or for school. So I want you to consider that sometimes you may not be able to be very honest with yourself. So the 2 tools I want to suggest to you is journaling. And I know that's a term we hear a lot, and sometimes they're like, oh, it's journaling. Even for me as a therapist, it's something I recommended to my clients a lot, but in the beginning I never used it. And it wasn't until I was in my own situation coming out of toxic relationships and being really traumatized and very stressed out by it that I started to really use journaling consistently. So it really does help to visually see. Most of us human beings, we are visual. We're able to lie to ourselves and be in denial when the thoughts are just thoughts, they're just in our mind. But when we have it written down, it's concrete, right? You can't unless you take an eraser and you erase what you wrote, right? But it really helps to have things on paper. So if you can journal what you've experienced, the feelings that came along with it, it's really hard to then go back and say, okay, no, this didn't happen, right? Because you have it written down. It's visual for you. The second tool that I want to suggest is that you process your experience with someone else, right? So whether that be a coach, a therapist, a counselor, someone that is not biased, someone that is not connected to you or to your situation, that you can process that experience with, and they can help you see things from a different perspective. But again, once those things come out, they can help you to reflect on that, where you're not then able to go back and lie to yourself about it or be in denial about it, right? You're basically forced to see the truth and to remember the truth, because oftentimes we see the truth when we get to the point of being fed up, but then when we want to see the best in people, right, or hope for the best, or hope that they've changed, then we start to forget everything that's happened. So whether we write it down or we process it with another individual that's not emotionally connected to us, that's when we're then able to see the truth and maintain that truth and not fall back into denial about things. The second point that I want you to consider to stop being manipulated into thinking that they've changed is I want you to look at what is the fantasy that I created around this person and around this relationship. So what do I mean by that? I'll use my situation for an example. I got with my toxic previous relationship from the age of about 20. Now, I was always the type of person that I had my whole life planned out. From the time I was about 13 or 14, I knew the career that I wanted. I knew, I knew everything that I wanted to do. I had all these plans and everything pretty much worked out, right? But I did not consider the fact that when you include a second person, that you don't have full control over everything. So with that said, I did have a fantasy not only about how I wanted to develop as an individual, but also how I wanted my relationship to look. And quite frankly, sometimes we have that fantasy before the person even comes in. We kind of already have an image, right, of how we want our life to look, and then we're just like, okay, I just need to fill that spot with the individual. So whatever individual we pick, and in this case, if the person is toxic, you have created a fantasy around that person, even if you see signs that that person is not fitting for you, because you are holding on to the fantasy. So for me, I had the fantasy of, by this age, I'm going to graduate. By this age, I'm going to get engaged. By this age, I'm going to get married. By this age, I'm going to start a family. By this age, I'm going to, advance in my career. I had all these plans, right? And again, these plans were created before the person even came in the picture. They were just the plug-in, right? So, and I see that a lot for women. I see that a lot, and men as well. But again, I'm often speaking to women here in my audience, but I see that a lot, and that's why people wonder, why, how is it that she has all these other areas of her life together, but she ended up in this bad situation, and she's still stuck in this situation, or she continues to go into more toxic or narcissistic relationships? It's because we have created a fantasy and we're just plugging in someone, right, without considering the fact that that person may not fit the image that we've created. So you want to look at what fantasy that I create around this person and around this relationship, and what fantasy am I holding on to? Once you realize a fantasy that you've created, you are then able to start letting it go. And you don't have to completely let go of your goals, but you have to let go of the fantasy that you created around that person. That person probably just does not fit the goals that you have set. And that is something we have to become okay with. The third step that you can take to stop being manipulated into thinking that they've changed is that you need to start reassessing your standards. And I'm saying reassessing, but maybe you even haven't even done it for the first time. So let's scratch reassess and just say assess your standards, your expectations, your limitations. What does that mean? Oftentimes, I had a very interesting conversation with a lady the other day, and she told me a story about a young girl that was living in a small town. She left the small town, went away to college, got her degree, came back to the small town, got a great job, raised by great parents, but she picked the worst of the worst in that small town to form a relationship with. And no one in this town can understand, how did this young lady who, is doing so well, making good decisions in other areas of her life, end up here? And the person I was having this conversation with, she said, Naila, why does this happen? And it dawned on me that it's because we're learning how to do everything else, but nobody's really teaching us how to start a relationship, how to choose a partner, right? We're choosing partners because as human beings, we're meant to have companionship, right? Now, of course, there's some people who choose to be single at different stages in their lives, but generally as human beings, we want companionship. However, no one's really sitting us down to say, how do you choose? What are your standards? Let's make a list first about what are your standards, and not the superficial list of, 6 feet, brown hair, whatever it is, but a list of what do you expect in a partner? How is someone going to fuel you as an individual and help you grow, right? And how you can do that for them as well. What are your limitations? What is your absolute zero tolerance, area, right? These are things that we are not thinking about, but we are already stepping into relationships. And sometimes by the time you already think about it, you're already so entangled in a relationship. So if you were to really start to assess, what are my standards? What are my expectations? That is when you will be able to say, okay, I'm not going to be with you because you say you've changed, or because you want another chance, or because you're singing me sweet nothings, right? You are making a decision based on what's best for you. That is the difference. Again, another pattern I see with women that I work with is that they're making decisions based on what the other person is saying. Let's try. I'm sorry. Let's work it out. Despite all the red flags that they see, because they're basing it off of what the person wants from them, not based on what you think is best for you. Because let's be real here for a minute. Someone can change. Let's say someone can change. And again, we're speaking about toxic, manipulative people with, personality disorder traits, narcissistic traits. 99% of the chance they may not change. But let's say in a fantasy world that they do change. That still doesn't mean that they're right for you. Right? And that's my point with this third point, to reassess your standards, your expectations, your limitations, your requirements. Because just because someone is nice, just because someone's changed, doesn't mean that they're still right for you, right? But you won't know that until you really take an assessment of yourself to say, who am I as an individual? What type of person do I need in my life that can add to me and that I can add to, right? That it's reciprocal. Right? But that takes time. And that goes back to the tools that I spoke about in the previous point about journaling, about processing these things with someone else, because sometimes it's really hard to figure that out on your own. But you can definitely start on your own, and I invite you to start today, right? But over time, if you feel like, okay, I want to go a little bit deeper, I want to go a little bit further, it does help to have it either written out where you can go back and read through some of your thoughts and different points that you've considered, as well as speaking with a professional. If any of this resonated with you, any of it sounds familiar to you, any of it seems helpful to you, you will get even more out of my ebook called Mistakes That I Made with Toxic Relationships. You can access it right now, download it right now. It's an ebook in the description box below. And if you want to connect a little bit further, you can also access my free membership group. That link is also in the description box below, where there are other women who are going through similar situations, who are looking to grow, heal, move on. And of course, I'm in there also offering support. So go ahead and click that link. That is currently free for now, so make sure you get access while you can. And again, if this episode was helpful for you, I'm glad. Give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe and share it with that one person person, there is at least one person we all know that can definitely benefit from this not the relationship, well, our relationship, yes, but from this episode. So go ahead and share with them as well, and I will see you in the next episode.